So I have finished my quilt, and I thought I'll bring it outside. Perhaps you can see the true colors of this now. I don't know if we can, because as I was saying, it was sort of photographing a little bit orange and bright green, like a lime green, and it's not. It's a very soft, pale green. But I finished it. Hopefully this can be focused in here. My quilting, I've done it all over free motion quilting stitch, and then on the borders I've done just a stitching all around it. This quilt has been quilted about every I'd say ½ inch to an inch over the entire quilt. I often don't quilt a quilt that much, maybe perhaps every 2 inches or so. But this that's how it just ended up. It's a bit of a decent twin size quilt. I put the border on it, as you can see, as I was saying, is those heart and flowers, the red and the green. I just thought that was really pretty. And let me see if I can come down here. The backing is the red and white polka dot. There goes my quilt. It's really windy here in Pennsylvania. Oh, it's lovely though. I love it. My quilt. I don't have a clothesline. I would love to have a clothesline. But this is how I photograph a quilt. I think I've shown you that before. To hold my quilts on a fence or something, I use these clips. Really good. So when the wind dies down, it just flaps over there. And yeah, so I just wanted to show you my finished quilt. I've been making it. You've been following along with me. The 2 blocks, 2 different colorways, just the 1 9 patch, next 9 patch, just different colorways. So there you go. So that's my little quilt, and I thank you for joining me on this little red, green, and white quilt journey. Now, coming up, I have some little bonus footage of actually some interesting things, how I quilted this, and yet then how I also washed it. It might be interesting. I do things a little bit different. Of course, I do things different. So anyway, there's my quilt. Oh, the sun's come out. Hopefully you can see this. Yeah, there's my quilt, and I thank you very much. So stay tuned for a little bit of bonus footage. All right, thanks, folks. Bye. A lot of people have asked me, this is just a bit of bonus footage, a lot of people have asked me if I pre-wash my fabrics. I don't. There's 2 schools of thoughts. There's people who do pre-wash and people who don't pre-wash. I don't. The school of thought that does is there's tons of chemicals, your starches, or oils from your hand, or rat poop, I don't know, which is all very valid for people who do. I do not have the time to pre-wash fabric. I like working with the sized, beautiful fabric from the shops. Having said that, what I do a lot of the time is after I make a quilt top, here is my quilt top, I will throw it in my washing machine. This has been constructed. I put the borders on it, and I've just taken it out of my washing machine. I wash it on a cold cycle, light wash, mild detergent, delicate, slow spin, the whole 9 yards. Having said that, it's turned out lovely. My whites are bright white. Having said that, color catchers, 3 or 4 or 5 in each washing. If I didn't put them in, would it have bled? I don't know. I don't think so. I've never really had trouble. Years and years ago, I used a really horrible red fabric that was about 25 years old, and it bled all over the place. Shouldn't have done it. But now color catchers, I quite like. There's Shout color catchers. I quite like the other brand in this country is Carbona, C-A-R-B-O-N-A, Carbona. They really catch a lot, but either or. So what I will do is I've washed this top, and hopefully you'll be able to see. My reds are quite brilliant. My whites are still bright. My greens, any shrinkage, any bleeding that will have taken place has taken place. Again, here's my backing. I make my backing. I put my backing together with the seam, and I have actually I have two washers. I have this washer and this washer. I will have done this again with color catchers because it's red, and it's probably I think I used about 5 of them, and they've come out pink. But the white's nice and white, and so that's what I do. So I have washed my quilts, but I haven't washed I've washed my quilt fabric, but I haven't washed my entire quilts. Now, having said that, you have batting, right? And batting will shrink. So this pretty much has shrunk. So, but the batting will shrink just a little bit, as opposed to when you're completely when you just wash your quilt afterwards, everything will have shrunk. But I find it doesn't shrink as much when I've pre-washed when I've washed my quilt top and my quilt backing. That's just how I do it. Everybody's different. Now, what I will do is I can stick these both in my dryer. I have one dryer, one washer, another washer, another dryer, another dryer. I have a large family, so I have 3 washers and 2 dryers. I'll stick this in this dryer, both of them together now, because I know they're okay. I won't put any like bounce or softeners in there. Again, because what I will do is I'll take my quilt top out just slightly damp. And then, because I would have spritzed it with water to iron it beautifully, to make it crisp again. And when I keep it damp out of the dryer, I don't have to spritz it. I don't have to starch it. It just will iron beautifully, and it'll look like brand new when I actually made it. It'll be nice and crisp and really lovely, without any of the chemicals or anything. So that's just a little hint. That's what I do. Again, I can't say enough about the color catchers. Look at that. It's amazing. But anyway, that's just a little bonus footage of how I actually wash my quilt top and backing before I construct it. So I just wanted to show you, I just took my my quilt out of the washing machine, and it's wrinkled. It's wrinkled, and it has these frays. Let me just get my scissors here. And this is a good time where you can come along and get the lumps of, where it's frayed, and make sure, there's no red in your white. But I just wanted to show you, yes, it is wrinkled, it's shrunk, and it's a little bit damp. But with my hot iron, and no starch, no sizing, because I don't want to put that back into the fabric. Because if I choose to sell this, which I'm not quite sure, I don't like to send off to customers who perhaps have allergies, any other chemicals that I've just taken out of the fabric. I understand that. I hope you don't think I was being flippant when I was saying about chemicals. People have a real problem, and that's why they pre-wash. This, to me, this method is this is what I do, and all my fabric will shrink. My blocks will shrink nicely, and then I come back and I've washed all of that stuff out of it, and then as I said, look, I've just kept it nice and slightly damp. And just for your information, it only takes a few minutes in my dryer, anyway, to dry a quilt top. It doesn't take forever, and as you can see, this now, my quilt top, is like looking back to, after I iron it, it's no big deal, of what it was when I constructed it from the newly bought fabrics. And this is just a little bit damp from my dryer. So that's how I do it. That's my little handy hint. So yeah, so here I am, and I'm just gonna go. And as I said, you will have seen this, you'll have seen my sham, but this is a little bit of bonus footage of some little tips that I have when I'm my thought process of constructing a quilt, for what that's worth. So here's another little bit of bonus footage on this quilt that I thought you might enjoy. I'm actually pin basting my quilt together. As you can see, I'm quite pleased. I've just finished ironing my top of my quilt, coming out freshly out of the washing machine. Freshly out of the dryer, washer and dryer, and my backing. I don't mind. I don't mind ironing. I quite enjoy it actually, and I just have an average size ironing board. I know there's these big boards. I suppose they would be helpful. I just don't really have the space behind my. There's my ironing board over there behind my behind my sewing machine. So I actually pin baste all my quilts. I've never pin basted on a bed or on the floor. I can't countenance that myself with my back. So I have this large table. Even if you had two maybe folding tables put together, I have done king size quilts on this table. I lay down my backing fabric, of course, and then my batting on top of it here, and then I work from sort of the side out. I smooth from the center out. I just keep smoothing and smoothing and smoothing. I don't actually even like tape my backing down or anything like that. I literally just keep pulling it out and smooth, smooth, smooth. You know me. Smoothing and reinforcing has a lot to do in sewing. And I have a whole bunch of pins. I think I have a tutorial or a slight little thing that I've done before about how I pin baste. I'll pin every I'll pin every 5 or 6 inches across my whole quilt. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to quilt this yet. Actually, yeah, I'm not quite sure. I will secure in the ditch between each row, vertically and horizontally, between each blocks, the rows I should say, to secure it to my backing. I actually, as I'm looking at this, because it's quite angular, as I think if you remember a baby quilt that I did, I might actually do an all-over free motion meandering stitch. That works up quickly. I know it's not for beginners, but maybe I'll actually show a little bit how I'm going to do that. Probably not in my border, but since it's a very busy border, I might just do again, just maybe every inch or so, because my meandering might be every inch. But maybe I'll show you how to do that. I mean, how I'm going to be doing that. An all-over meandering stitch. For beginners, you could actually do a diagonal right down each block, having secured your blocks, and this way, or how with my finger, like this, make an X with just a straight stitch, and that would be very, very effective. As I'm looking at this through my camera, it sort of looks like Strawberry Shortcake. Remember her with that bright green and the strawberries? Actually, I was looking at it. This border fabric is not the same, and I don't think it's even the same brand. I think this is called from Lexian. It's a Japanese import anyway in this country. It's not. This is a little bit of a different red as opposed to this more orangey red, if you can see it. But I saw it and I'm like, oh, that's so pretty. The hearts and the roses, it all has the same look. So there's my quilt, just my pin basting again, a little bit of bonus footage on how this quilt has actually come to life. I'm free motion quilting my quilt here, and before I show you, it's not a tutorial, before I show you actually how I'm doing this, I've already started it. I've started using a meandering stitch every ½ inch to an inch or so across my blocks, just my blocks. I have, as you've seen, I've attached a sashing to my quilt, and then my border. I've stitched in the ditch along here, and I'm going to actually address my sashing and my border completely different than the body of my quilt, my blocks. And I was thinking about it. Free motion quilting, so many people say, oh, I want to do it. Free motion quilting is something that can't be taught. What I mean by that is a quilting teacher can teach you how to thread a machine or make a block. Well, I can't. Go somewhere else if you want to make a block. I try, but or to put a zipper in, or you know, to add a border, or to measure, or to cut fabric. Free motion quilting is that a teacher can show you tips and hints, but the student really has to take it upon themselves to get to your machine, and actually sew. You need to feel your foot pedal. You need to feel your machine. Whatever it is, you need to feel the way the stitches are going. And again, it's all experimental. It's not a one, shot deal. Your needles could be different. Your batting on your quilt could be different. You could be using, this is a warm and plush, which is a bit thicker than warm and natural. You may use a wool batting or bamboo batting. Maybe your cotton isn't the best fiber, or it's fantastic, or your machine is older, and has a good stitch quality, but maybe a bit heavier, as it were. All of these things are taken into account when you're free motion quilting, and it is difficult. Now, a lot of people say get practice sandwiches, which is a good idea. I recommend black or dark blue, and then white thread, because then you can see where you're screwing up, because you're going to screw up. You're going to have loops, and you're going to have a million stitches in one little area. You're going to have tons. So I endorse that practice method. But also, what I think is a really good idea is if you actually make a quilt, maybe just squares, just sew a bunch of squares together, and it may be a donation quilt, maybe to the homeless shelter, or a baby quilt to the local hospital. Because what I'm saying that is because I feel a larger quilt gives you more room to experiment and to do your quilting on, because it works up quickly. It really does work up quickly. Now, I've just stopped. I stopped down here somewhere. When you free motion quilt, you just sort of want to concentrate on this area in front of you. Having said that, you can get boxed in all of a sudden, even with this meandering. You go, oh, I don't have any place to go. So that's okay. Stop. Just stop. Bring your thread up, bring your thing up, make it through knots, and go elsewhere on your quilt. Another thing also is with a meandering stitch, unlike perhaps when you go to a long arm quilter and they do a free motion quilting, I'm not crossing over any of my lines here. I'm just making these loop-de-loops all over, in one block, out the other, in one block, out the other. I'm thinking of maybe letters like a large C I'm making, or a B, or an E, in your mind. Because you're having to think where you're going to be going, the next place. And a lot of people, it's either, again, when you're learning how to do it, you have to figure out, oh, where's my thread? You have to figure out, oh, my thread's caught. Excuse my ugly hands here. Where's my thread? Yeah, you have to figure out where you're going. And also, what I like to do is, even though the needle is going up and down, and you can go anywhere, you can go forward, you can go backwards, I like to actually every 18 inches or so actually move my quilt, because I feel that your brain has actually been almost programmed into this meandering. And after a while, you're thinking, oh, I'm just going this way. So if you shift your quilt around, then you're all over meandering. Will be a lot more free. So enough talking. I'll just show you. I know you can't do this, or else you are. You put your needle down. I pull my thread up. Underneath, I obviously have set my machine. I've shown you this before. My eye is going to be going to this area here, and you either go. Now that's too slow, or that's too fast. So you have to figure out. I like that. You have to figure out how fast or slow. I err on the quicker side, not because I'm an expert quilter, but I feel I have more control as opposed to going very slow. So I err on the faster side, and I think quite a lot of quilters actually do that a little bit. Again, you're feeling. A lot of people use gloves. I don't, as you can see, I don't use gloves. I like the feel of my thing. I cannot strive the importance, not strive, I can't tell you the importance of sitting right in front of the machine. Even the casters on a sewing machine, on the feet, if they're sort of wobbly and you're just a hair off, you really want to be right in front of your machine. Forget the rest of your quilt. I've made this a twin size quilt. Forget the rest of your quilt. Concentrate on this area here, and then And then just figure out a little loop there, a little backwards loop there. I'm going to come up, I'm going to come around this intersection, but I'll go back and I'll do a little loop there. Every half inch or so. It is easier, it's easier, it looks easier. Oops, now see, now I'm close to there. Am I going to sweat about it? Of course I'm not. I'm just going to come out here. It looks easier than it is. It's not easy. Even for myself, if I haven't free motion quilted in a few weeks, I'm like, oh, where do I start? So it really, I can't reiterate the fact, it takes practice, practice, practice. Practice, practice, practice. You also want to experiment, as I said, with threads. I actually use, I've just run out of my bobbin thread, but I actually use Aurifil, which is a 50 weight thread in my bobbin, and I think it stitches up really beautifully on the back of my quilt here. That's my Aurifil, but on the top actually, let me just see, I'm actually using Sulky, which is a rayon thread, which is a 40 weight. It's a heavier thread. It's more of an embroidery thread, but it stitches up just with a little bit of a sheen. And I just love it. This is a beautiful thread. So I would, even though it's a cotton quilt, you can experiment with different threads, different thread weights. Again, each machine is different. Each machine will either like a thread or doesn't like a thread. And you have to figure that out. That's the whole thing. You have to figure out what your machine likes. Again, I'm going to keep my needle down, and I'm going to shift my fabric. So I'm going to do this side. Again, just concentrate on this area here, where you want to go. Like I've stopped there. I had a bobbin change right there, so I'll just go back and I'll connect it. It's you know, your quilt will take on a whole new look with free motion quilting. Now, what I did do before I started free motion quilting, I actually secured my sashing with a stitch in the ditch, and I've actually secured between my two. I have two colorway blocks. I've secured my stitch in the ditch between the rows. This quilt is 6 blocks across 8 rows down. So I've actually stitched that just to secure my quilt. There are my, if you can see, there are my stitches there for my stitch in the ditch, and then here are my free motion quilting stitches. So anyway, I really urge you to try to just try experimenting. Keep on it, because it really does work up quickly. This quilt is working up very quickly. I'm really pleased. So I'm just going to continue quilting this, and yeah, I hope you enjoy this little whatever it is that I'm showing you about free motion quilting. Okay, thanks. Bye.